So here's Mark Ramm talking about Juju, cloud deployments, fun stuff.
All right, so who here uses the cloud? Okay. Apparently, so I've worked at Canonical for, I don't know, 18, 19 months now. And apparently the person they interviewed for manager of Juju, before me, they asked them if they used the cloud. And they said yes. And they said, well, what did you do? And they're like, well, I have Dropbox.
That's a Dropbox account?
Yeah, that was how they used the cloud. So, good job. They did not get hired, apparently. So, I got that job because I had not used Dropbox. No, I had, but I'd also used AWS and other things. For people who use the cloud, who uses Amazon? Okay, so I'm trying to get the pitch here. What level to pitch it at? All right, so who knows what Juju is? Okay, George did not raise his hand, so he's fired. You raised your hand, you're not fired. He works on the GUI, we'll show the GUI later. So we've got a bunch of people who work on Juju in this room. This is the largest concentration of Juju people anywhere in the world right now. So that's pretty exciting for you guys.
Yeah, Mark, we're thrilled.
Exactly. Okay, so Juju, we call it service orchestration for the cloud. George is community manager for Juju and Ubuntu cloud stuff. I am director of engineering for Juju. We have, depending on how you count them, about 7 teams of people working on Juju right now.
7 teams? Wow.
Yes, Juju is big for us. We care about Juju, we care about service orchestration in the cloud. Scott is looking at me like, you're crazy. Why do you have 7 teams? They're small teams.
Scott not in Juju?
No, he is on the server side and the cloud side.
Everything you see here doesn't work. Scott Moser.
It is true. Whenever anything happens in Juju and a new machine starts, we use cloud.
Okay.
Scott is responsible for
He's
that.
still our friend.
And also, he is a very good person to tell you that you fucked it up. Which we love about Scott. So later on, when there's Q&A, he can ask all the hard questions. Because he knows all the rough spots. Okay, so that's who we are. Before I worked at Canonical, I worked for SourceForge. I was director of engineering there too. Although I started as just like there was 2 Python programmers. And it's like, we should hire a Python programmer and see if we can do something cool instead of all this PHP. And me and this guy, Dave Bronsma, did something cool in a month and a half and launched it. And they're like, holy crap, these guys are amazing. Let's stop doing that thing that was cool and have them work on SourceForge. So we went and switched to SourceForge, and we redesigned the web front end for downloading stuff. Me and Dave, and we got to hire 2 new guys that knew Python. And that worked out, and they're like, okay, now you're in charge of everything. Redesign all the tools. So we did that. And I had a lot of fun, and it was a great experience, and got to work with a bunch of great people. And I really, I kept getting promoted. I enjoyed my job. We were actually profitable the last year that I was there. So I was director of engineering for 1 year, and we were profitable during that entire year, which we had never been profitable in 2 consecutive quarters before. So that was pretty nice. So I was having a lot of fun, and I wasn't like, oh my goodness, I need to get out of here. But the job opportunity came up to work on Juju, and I was very excited about Juju. So I switched because I thought this stuff is cool. So Juju is, anyway, service orchestration for the cloud. We somehow lost the slide.
There you go.
So service orchestration for the cloud. Who knows what that means?
Trying to keep things from stepping on each other?
That is part of it. You said you know what it means. What does it mean?
Service orchestration means you're doing that. You're working with service levels instead of server levels in your view of your infrastructure.
Okay, so this is complex and buzzwordy. And whenever people hear service orchestration for the cloud, first of all, they're like, the cloud is this thing where there are servers, and service orchestration is this thing where there are services and they need to be orchestrated. I don't even know what the heck that means. So, let's start with the cloud. What is the cloud? Who wants to define the cloud? Anyone? Anyone? Bueller?
When you draw a good flow chart, you put that up in there.
So the cloud, it's out there. The cloud, yeah, like, it's surprising, like, the cloud is this big thing, and the cloud is the thing that's happening, and everybody has to be on the cloud. It's out there. People have trouble defining the cloud. So for the purposes of this presentation, and I think as a reasonable thing, the cloud is an API that lets you spin up some servers and do some stuff. Like, you don't have to go and call Dell and be like, hey Dell, I need a new, whatever, precision, blah blah blah. I need a new server. And then they're like, okay, well it's on back order, we'll get it to you in 3 weeks. 3 weeks later, you get a server, you install the operating system, you start installing some software. Then another week later, you're like, hey, I've got it all installed, it's production ready, I'm gonna put it in production. That is the old world. In the new world, you send an API call to Amazon and say, I want a server that runs Ubuntu. And it's like, okay, here you go. And here you go. Some time passes, but not a month. If that API call takes a month, then Amazon's doing something wrong. So you get a server. I guess I didn't talk to this slide. What is the cloud? I have had at other user group talks, people think that the cloud just means like all my data, all my stuff is up somewhere and Amazon takes my money and they screw you because it's way better to have your own servers, or the government's spying on everything you do, or it's just Dropbox, it's just client services. But the important thing is, we used to live in a world where it took a long time to get a server, and every server was unique and special. We are moving to a world where you can get a server whenever you want one, and they're all not unique and special. They're transient and the opposite of special. Hopefully. So the next question, so we've defined cloud. The cloud is just being able to get servers easily and deploy services onto them. What is orchestration? Why is that different than just like apt-get? So the example I use here is, this example is dated, but when I was married, my mother-in-law did not know how to turn on the TV. I mean, she knew how to turn on the TV, but the TV was connected to the receiver, and the receiver was connected to the DVD player and the Blu-ray player, and she would try to watch a movie and she could not figure it out. Because you had to connect the TV, hook it up to the receiver, hook it up, all these pieces. And she just wanted to play a movie, and she did not know how to play a movie. So it is the connecting of your TV to your receiver to your Blu-ray player so you can play a movie. You're gonna have the TV all the time. Sometimes you want to play a movie, sometimes you want to watch TV, sometimes you want to do other things. And it's that button, like, I want to watch TV, I want to watch a DVD. It reconfigures your system dynamically to do the thing that you want it to do. That is orchestration. So it's like the universal remote control for software. So why do we care about this kind of thing? Has anyone in this room tried to install it? No. So back in my days at SourceForge, we were trying out a bunch of data things. We tried out Cassandra, we tried out MongoDB, we tried out a bunch of database stuff, because this is the early days of, like, we're taking over SourceForge's download page, and there's a bunch of stats collection, and there's a bunch of different things that need to go on. We're like, what's the right tool for the job? And so we spent a week trying to get a little test cluster of machines running Hadoop. Sure, they were all like a stack of Mac Minis in somebody's office, but like we did it, but it took a week, and we're like, I don't think we can do that again. That's going to be a problem. Who knows exactly what we did? So if you look at the instructions say, okay, here's how you download it, and then they say, oh, here are the configuration files on the next page. The thing that it doesn't say is what to do with those configuration files and what those configuration things mean. So you're like, oh, okay, sure, there's 20 configuration files I have to edit. What do I do with them? And then you have your data path settings, you have a bunch of other stuff. You go to the
Editing XML by hand, my favorite.
Right.
I just wanted to
You do
point that
have a
out.
lot of editing XML, because these are all, the config files are all XML, they're all huge. There's a bunch of them. There's like 4 or 5 different things that you have to figure out how to connect, and then there's performance tuning, and then it is some craziness. So that is the old way to install Hadoop. And Hadoop is just one service. But Hadoop has different components. There is, to oversimplify, this calls it the slave cluster and the master. But there's 2 things. There's name nodes, job tracker, and then there's a bunch of nodes in your Hadoop cluster that do actual MapReduce jobs, but one sort of central thing that does the, well, there are a bunch of things that do reduce and one that does the map, if you think of it that way. There's, okay, I take the problem and I split it up into a bunch of pieces and tell people, crunch on it for a while, and then they give back the answer. That control thing, and all the slaves need to be connected. So with Juju, you can just Juju deploy Hadoop, and then you say, I want one of these in the Hadoop master configuration. Or we're going to call it Hadoop master. Juju deploy Hadoop, we're going to call this one slave. So now we have, what's going on in the background is as soon as you type Juju deploy, the Juju server that lives out there says, oh, I need a new machine. It asks the cloud for one. It gets back a new machine. It deploys Ubuntu. It deploys the Hadoop charm, and then it calls the install part. So now Hadoop is installed on those 2 things. When we go Juju add unit n to slave cluster, now we have 3 servers that are running as slave clusters. But they're not really configured to work together yet. So that's what happens next. We do Juju add relation Hadoop master as name node and Hadoop slave cluster as data node. So now these 2 things are connected, and they're actually, at the time we add this connection, they're reconfigured to be, the one is Hadoop master becomes a name node and the other ones become data nodes. Yes?
If you're totally lost at this point, how I used to be, because you don't understand Hadoop, we're going to get to WordPress and MySQL in a minute.
Right. The point is, there's these 2 things. They're being connected together dynamically. And then we can keep adding units to the slave cluster. We keep getting more units of Hadoop. This replaces all of that configuration and wiki page and week of effort by 2 reasonably smart dudes to get Hadoop working. And it's repeatable. Yes.
I'm assuming these run scripts. Can you still make modifications to the original config files?
So these run, well, we'll get into how they deal with configuration, but these run scripts that take configuration. So you can pass configuration to those scripts which configure it the way you want it.
So, okay, this would work great on a newly downloaded system.
Right.
But it might crash if you modify the config files first.
Well, this is designed. Juju deploy Hadoop gets you a new server. It does not take a server you already have by default. There's ways. But so yeah, this works on a new system. It is designed to be repeatable on newly configured and deployed servers. If you have an existing thing, like if you have an existing Hadoop cluster, Juju is not going to help you manage that thing. It helps you deploy Hadoop and manage it.
Oh, I haven't got to managing yet. This is, but I have an existing cluster Can I just take let me build another one?
This will let you build a new cluster. It will not take over your existing cluster and fix it in any way. So, okay, next slide. Oh.
Okay, that's fine.
Anyway, apt-get for the cloud. So one way of thinking of Juju is it's like apt-get. I think I said this in my description of this talk, but I remember when I switched from RPM-based distros, which shall remain nameless, to Debian-based distro that had just come out in like 2005 timeframe, which shall also remain nameless. And like you could just apt-get install like Mailman and it would work. You're like, holy shit, that is like, I don't even have a job anymore because apt-get install is all I needed to do. Isn't that easy? Turned out I had a lot of other things to do other than install and configure Mailman. Oh, still up there. So we can deploy things quickly and easily, and we can connect things. That's the example. We'll go down to not just deployment, so you can scroll down. Sorry. So we can deploy sets of connected services. We showed Hadoop in 2 configurations, but the next example will show much more interesting things. It's also orchestration, so it's not just deploying them. apt-get was great, but all it would do is deploy something on this machine that I already have. It configures the machines. It connects things together when we'll show examples, but say you have a bunch of app servers and you add a unit, and in front of it you have a load balancer. When you add unit to the app server, the load balancer gets reconfigured to know about the new app server. Like it's dynamic in a way that traditional tools were not. And it also, you'll notice when we looked at that script earlier, you saw deploy Hadoop. You didn't see this machine, that machine. You're not caring about machines. You're caring about services and units of those services. The machines are just the stuff that have to be there to make the services go. It gives you a level of abstraction from caring about the configuration, the precise configuration of this individual machine. And that is a big mental shift. And we can talk about that more. So we can go to the next slide. Well, let's actually do some demo.
All right.
And then I'll talk about DevOps and how this changes things and various things. So, George is gonna.
Let's here we go. Okay, so you want me to just drop?
Yeah, just
Okay.
go ahead and drive.
So Mark was talking about how easy it is to deploy stuff. So Hadoop's kind of hard to get your head around, right? You need to know like what MapReduce is. So I'm going to do something simple. We're going to create a blog for Mug, right? How many of you have deployed WordPress before? Okay, so you know you have like a machine, you go get some PHP, you set up a MySQL database and stuff like that. And that's all well and fine. But I think in 2013 we there's a lot of meta work that goes into setting up services. Like you saw that Hadoop stuff and your boss is like, have you got that Hadoop already set up? And you're like, yeah, not really, but I'm learning a bunch of stuff. What you're really doing is like editing configuration files and not really getting it. So Juju's all about getting your stuff up the cloud as fast as possible. So I am going to deploy to Amazon Web Services. So I'm going to use this command, Juju switch Amazon. You don't need to worry about what that is. And I can do this command, Juju status, tells me what I have running in Amazon right now. Juju requires a orchestration node, which for these purposes, just know that there's a machine that's running that lets all this magic happen. That you don't need to worry about it right now. But there it is in case you care.
It's called Machine Zero because we give it fancy names.
Yes.
Like 0, 1, 2.
But you don't care. You care about, we want to get a blog up as fast as possible, right? So we're going to say Juju deploy. What's your favorite word blog software? Of course, it's WordPress. That's debatable. You can choose whatever you want.
As long as it's charming.
As long as it's charming. So what's happening here is Juju's talking to the orchestration node, it's talking to the cloud, and this tool that Scott Moser wrote called Cloud Init, and Amazon says, okay, I want a server. It's going to install an official Ubuntu image, 64-bit by default on an AWS small, and then it's executing a thing called a charm, which is a set of scripts that's deploying WordPress, all the stuff that you've seen in the wiki on how to, wget this tarball, untar it, put it in var ww, all those kinds of things. So we've got the blog. The blog's going to need a database. We're going to pick MySQL. Another instance is going to fire up, doing the exact same thing. It's grabbing the operating system. It's running a thing called a charm. This charm basically does apt-get install MySQL, and then it's doing all the MySQL things that you care about, creating the database, and it's doing all this automating, right? So now we've got a total of 3 machines running on AWS. Doing AWS status here.
So you've got the orchestration node and the 2 services that you can install. That's how you get 3.
Right, so if you read here, we have machine 0, 1, and 2. Right here. Machine 1, machine 2. Here's MySQL, here's the version, it's running. Agent state is pending, that means we're waiting on Amazon to fire up the instances. Remember how Mark mentioned that Amazon give you an instance pretty much right away? By right away, we mean like 4 to 5 minutes, which is still not bad considering that in Oakland, it took 4 months to do a PO for a web server. But so these things are firing off right now. But we've got a machine running WordPress. We have a machine running MySQL. And if you ignore everything else that we tell you this evening, there's only Juju does one thing, and it was designed to do one thing, right? When WordPress needs to talk to MySQL, things need to happen, right? If you deployed this, you've known this, right? WordPress says, okay, you've installed WordPress. Point to me to the MySQL server. You need a username and password for that, and then it says, okay, you need to create these tables, and you run these on MySQL. Then MySQL says, database, sweet, I'm ready. Then you have to go back to WordPress, you gotta fill in all the other stuff, and then you gotta go back, right? And that's just simple, that's just for a blog. Imagine something really complicated, things I could do, where there's communication that needs to happen between those nodes. Juju was created to make those 2 things happen. That's the only problem it was made to solve, is to make those 2 things happen. And we do this with this command.
So earlier George said the database is created? Not yet.
No, we've done nothing yet but install MySQL and WordPress. Here's where the magic happens.
This is super magic.
And I'm going to translate this into George speak as I do it. Juju, I want you to make sure that WordPress and MySQL are best friends. All that creation of the database, setting the passwords, doing all the tables, doing that is what that add relation does, and then we'll show you how that works in code. But what's really great here is, remember, we're not caring about the individual machines. We know that there's one with WordPress, one MySQL. We're making the relationship between WordPress and MySQL be a defined interface. What's awesome about that, and it took me a long time to get this, is when you define the relationship between WordPress and MySQL, you get horizontal scaling for free. That means from now on, when I add more WordPress, it doesn't need to know how to configure itself to MySQL. You've defined the relationship already. So why is that important? Well, first let's wait for the blog to come up. And we can do this by running a Juju status. Don't worry, we'll show you a GUI if you guys are flipped out. You guys are a Linux group, so I know you guys like command line. That's okay. So we know here WordPress.
GUI, otherwise Rick Harding will
So we're doing agent status pending. So right now, Amazon is firing off those images. It's interesting. Like it takes like 5 minutes, and even after then, you start to get impatient. You're like, come on, dude, really? But in the meantime. Rick's worked really hard on this thing called the Juju GUI. So we're going to deploy that in our Amazon instance as well. So let's just fire that up. Let's see, what other things can I fire up just to show off here? What's your favorite database, Jim?
Cassandra.
Postgres.
MongoDB.
Sure, let's just fire all these up. It's all on Mark's bill anyway. Right?
Not my bill, the other one. The one who has a bigger page.
So let's just...
In that case, let's add some units.
Amazon blocks.
I don't want to get too complicated because my status will get complicated. So, Mark, Ramm, keep talking while Amazon's
Okay, so while all these units are spinning up, Juju.
We'll skip this slide.
Well, okay, so we'll go to the next slide, and I'll talk through this and we'll come back to that. So what he did was deploy WordPress, deploy MySQL. We did not do, and we probably should, have done memcache. Let's just do memcache. So memcache can be related to MySQL, and then images are served out of the memory cache, not off disk. And that improves the performance of WordPress significantly. All of this, so there's another interesting thing about the WordPress charm is that it fires up Nginx on all the nodes, and all of the nodes know about each other. So when you just add unit, you'll get another. There's that unit. It's already on the slide. So when you add unit WordPress, you'll get another one, and they know about each other. And so if you hit either one, they load balance. All of them are load balancers for the whole cluster, which is kind of cool. You don't need a separate load balancer to configure. You just point DNS, round robinette, all of them, and they deal with it fine. I don't know what's going on behind me.
Sorry, we're just saying the status of.
So, as all this is coming up on Amazon, I'll just start telling the story that I was going to tell. Is at SourceForge Incorporated, they renamed themselves GeekNet. Because they owned more things than just SourceForge, and one of the things they owned was Slashdot. And one of the things that they did while I was there was try this idea called /TV, and it was a WordPress blog that was part of Slashdot. So it was going to automatically get Slashdotted all the time. Turns out being Slashdot is not that hard to handle anymore, but not because Slashdot's traffic's gone down that much, but we got powerful hardware, it's not. But we needed an industrial strength WordPress. So we needed things to get cached in memcache. We needed MySQL to be master slave. We needed multiple units of WordPress. So, and we had a hacked version of the WordPress theme that needed to go in, and we had specific plugins that we wanted to be there. So we wrote a bunch of scripts to do this on a laptop so that people could develop this software, this site. And then we wrote a bunch of scripts to do this in a test environment. And then we wrote a bunch of scripts to deploy this for reals in production. And we had to, like, every time something changed, like, oh, we need a new plugin, we changed 3 sets of scripts. The one to do it, to deploy it on a laptop so you can develop, the one to deploy it in testing, and the one to deploy it in production. That was a pain in the neck. And it turns out, we screwed the scripts up a few times, and things broke, and it was unpleasant. But Juju has, and I'm getting ahead because we're waiting on this, but Juju has the ability to deploy to LXC containers on your local Ubuntu laptop, to Amazon, and to a data center where you own all the servers. Juju can do all of those things, so you can use the exact same set of Juju deploy WordPress, add relation, whatever. That exact same set of things can go to a bunch of local machines, which are just LXC containers, or a cloud, or real, honest-to-goodness physical servers. Whatever you need it to do. So where are we at?
We are ready. Woo! So we do a Juju status, WordPress, and it tells us, hey, it has this public address. And then you're going to go...
This beautiful public address.
Here. Oh no, it doesn't work. Anyone know why?
We didn't expose it!
That's right. So you have to explicit, because the cloud is, it's impossible for us to guess when WordPress would be ready. We don't just want you to open stuff. So we want you to be explicit here and say, Juju expose WordPress.
Well, you might just want WordPress to be available to other things inside this environment.
So this opens into the World Wide Interwebs. Oops.
In case you don't know, EC2 by default firewalls everything but SSH, or even SSH?
Yeah, I think you have to put it in a rule.
Well, no matter whether your cloud does it, Juju
Right.
will do it for you. We don't want your stuff getting hacked by mistake. We're mostly against that.
Let's see. Let's go Amazon.
There it is.
Look at that. So what's really awesome is this actually deployed in shorter time than he was like telling a story, right? Which is really important. Now WordPress is a simple example, right? So let's do this. We'll do Mug's website. admin. There's WordPress. Not bad. Okay. I have a problem though. It's like some guy from the Free Press was in this meeting and then he like published in the paper. You guys should check out mug.org. It's really amazing. Except we only deploy it on one Amazon small. So what do you guys think I'm gonna do next? I want to scale. Oh no.
We figured it out, Joe.
Add unit WordPress.
And this?
Bam! Oh, actually, you can also say, New York Times ran an article.
Now we're really spending money.
What's great about this is, remember, we made the relationship between WordPress and MySQL at the service level. Now the amount of machines does not really matter that much, which is really, really cool. Getting horizontal scaling for free is really awesome. So we can visualize this with the amazing Juju GUI, which we've also deployed. So one of the problems we wanted to solve, so command line tools. Oh yeah, command line tools and stuff are really great, but people really like easy to use graphical user interfaces.
Okay, before you get into the GUI.
Sure.
So right now we've got what, 6 instances of WordPress running?
Something like that. Yeah.
You did the first one, right? No.
Juju status WordPress.
Yeah. So there's 6 virtual machines out there running WordPress.
Yes.
Yes.
How many are running the database? Just one?
Just one so far. We haven't added unit with MySQL. So MySQL.
Oh, okay. So you've scaled WordPress, but not the database.
Yes.
Right.
Exactly. So in this case, what we would want to do is we'd want to deploy some MySQL masters and slaves,
Yeah.
which we can do, but I'm not really set up to do right now.
That's fine.
We are working, however, with the MariaDB guys to bring Galera to the Charm store, which will give you MySQL master to master. And PostgreSQL Charm does master slave out of the box as well. So yes, in this example, it depends on the service, right? So WordPress is one. So if you had 1 million authors writing to the database at the same time, scaling the database would be an issue. WordPress, usually most of the traffic are readers, right? And you're serving that directly out of Memcache, so you're not hitting the database that much.
Okay.
But the option is there, absolutely.
And for instance, you actually might, in a very high traffic situation, where you have lots of comments and other things going on, want to have MySQL slaves, and the WordPress charm handles that. So if you add a slave to your MySQL database, then all of these
We could try to
do
see what
reads
happens.
off the database.
Okay.
I mean, I haven't tried this, so.
What happened to the worm on that hook?
Uh-oh.
Yeah, we have a relation error.
That's good. I'll show you guys how to fix that soon.
Yeah, we'll look at it in the GUI, because the GUI is fancy for seeing those kinds of errors.
But you don't have the GUI exposed yet, right?
I just exposed it.
Okay, I missed that.
Right there, yeah.
How does the horizontal scaling work?
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, you have 6 IP addresses now, so you just said DNS to round robin?
Right. On this particular case, like you may have a load balancer that you put in front and then set DNS to the load balancer and then have scalability behind the load balancer.
Hey, Rick, which password is this?
With whatever your environment password is.
Yeah, so you gotta look in your environment. Everybody look away. Close your eyes.
Wait, this is being teed.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Go ahead, hit it, George.
Let me unplug that. It's
What we're really talking about Amazon bill, I'd say. Let me introduce you to LXC, man.
no, I'll show off LXC in a minute.
Yeah.
It's the admin secret, right?
Yes, it's the admin secret, yeah. It's, it's not, it's changed now.
It should be a config option.
It is. It is a config option and a branch that's not yet been
Okay,
published.
so you put in
yet,
your secret password.
Branch has landed though.
Yeah, you put in, so there's an admin secret which lets you control things from the command line that's in your file. We also use that to log into the GUI. Wow, this is really big at this rate.
Yeah. Okay, so this is a graphical representation of everything we've been doing so far. So we have WordPress. See the little globe there? That means it's exposed. That means it's actually exposed to the internet.
Yeah.
We see the red. We know we have a problem there. Yellow means pending. That means those units are still coming up. something bad. Ooh, one, see that? One just went green. One obviously went bad, which is actually good. We can show you what you want to do. There's your database. There's the other two databases. The GUI itself is representing itself.
And over here are things that you could deploy.
Right.
If you were not using the command line and you're like the kind of person who's like, I just want me some MediaWiki, you can drag it over here, you can click it and click add to my canvas.
How many MediaWiki? 2.
We're spending money for this demo.
These are smalls.
For less than an hour, Amazon's relevant. I mean, this will cost me less than $10.
These are M1 smalls?
Yeah, we default to
This is
small.
cheap.
This is like 6.5 cents an hour?
Yeah, this is
We're spending.
So let's expose the service.
This whole thing.
we're gonna spend like $1. It's gonna be good.
Right. Specify.
Take a free cookie.
So what size servers are small?
Yes, absolutely.
So
Yes.
2 gig.
I'm sorry, what?
What size servers
Well-
are small?
The environment.
2 gig? That's what somebody says.
Actually,
Well, yeah,
Well,
so
I mean,
you
it's a
can't,
different story.
no, it's fine.
Okay.
In the future, there's -2, -2 lets you do some placement things about where you want that thing to be placed. In the relatively near future, you'll be able to specify
That's very beefy.
availability zones there.
Yeah.
You gotta remember too,
We're
these are
trying to make sure
Amazon
that-
EC2 units, so you're not getting a real
In the
code,
past,
you're
we've
getting
been
a virtual.
very
Yeah, so
project,
that's 8 gig.
and not everybody has availability zone concepts. But now we're trying to
Yeah,
let you do what you need to do.
so it's 8 gig and 1.7 gig.
And still be cloud agnostic where you
Yeah,
can.
1.7 gig right now. Yeah.
So we just want some MediaWiki.
Oh, and that needs to relate to.
Yes, so let's do that. Let's, no, we'll come back to that. We'll come back to
Yeah,
that bug
yeah.
here in a minute.
Yeah.
All the yellows
Just one
came
bad
up.
one, but the other 5.
There's the one that erred, that's not ever gonna get fixed unless we do something. But the ones that were pending are gonna be.
We're just gonna reuse the same database, because why not?
Sure.
Yeah, I mean,
Now, when you just drew the line between them, did it go out and actually build all the tables that MediaWiki needs in that database?
Absolutely.
well,
Okay.
it is doing, first it's creating a username, a special username and password for these two to talk. Then it is giving the password to MediaWiki, putting in the MediaWiki config, telling MediaWiki, okay, now install the tables you need. And
Wow.
all that back and forth is
That's
going
really cool.
When you draw that line, it handles it.
Now,
That was the same thing as doing add relation? Is that-
Yes, exactly.
yes, that's
okay.
exactly
Yeah,
what I did.
okay.
Add relation creates that line, that's all.
Remember back in grade school when there was the big argument about you shouldn't be allowed to use calculators because you'll forget how to do this? It's sort of like what this is.
Well, the thing is like, but I want to be able to do all the hard, complicated stuff. So do I.
Yeah.
Once.
Yeah.
And then I want to. But we're going to show you. We're going to show you here how we're going to do some little advances. So let's find out what.
Does all this rest on these things you call charms? And
Yes.
you've written the charms, and you now have charms for WordPress and MySQL.
Right, so we've written charms. Charms are open source projects. We'll talk about charms in a little bit. I'll come back. So let's fix this WordPress stuff, or at least look at it.
So
Oh, there we go.
this is the fancy inspector. So Rick Harding worked on this. Isn't this gorgeous, by the way? I just think this is.
It's almost as gorgeous as Rick Harding himself.
That's a pretty tall order.
There's a little bit less of like London professional designers work on this than on that. No European designers were paid for this.
Yeah. So we're talking about this. Somebody asked a question about config. You can actually save your configs for your different services and put them in here. And each charm, we'll get into this more when we get into charms, but charms let you set config. So let's say you prefer Apache over Nginx. You just change this to Apache and it does exactly what you think it does. It reconfigures everything to use Apache instead of Nginx, resources services for you and everything. Because you did that at the service level, not the machine level. You don't have to worry, oh God, I have 50 nodes that I need to SSH into to switch my web server, which is pretty cool. And Marco includes some tuning options here that you can read, but we can get into that later. And constraints we can get into in a little bit, and also relations. But let's find out what's going on with this unit here. Hey Rick, where's the machine?
Open them up.
Got it. All right. Oh boy.
Quick retry.
I need to.
Yeah.
That's your root machine, so I suggest you don't remove it.
Well, no. So all of them are peers now. There's nothing special about this one. They're just peers. This one can go away.
So you can get rid of it.
How do you know what's wrong though?
It'll take a.
Exactly. So let's go into that.
Well, yeah.
Don't worry, it'll be fun.
And we can look deeper in the GUI too.
Yes.
We can
So
look this way.
we'll do Juju status WordPress. So let's find out what's going on here. Here's where it gets really cool, I promise. Okay, so we know. All right, I kind of overdid it by launching too many, but let's see. We have WordPress 0. You just say started.
So it started now.
So we might have fixed it.
Oh, your retry might have retry.
Ah, bummer. All right, let's pretend it's broken.
Damn thing.
But you know, as much as we're going to preach that machines aren't important, it's all about the service. Sometimes bad things happen because they're computers. So we're going to pretend that bad things happened on WordPress unit 0. So you have the ability to SSH to any one of the individual nodes here. It's using our SSH keys, nobody flip out.
That's neat.
Yeah, sometimes people flip, hey, what's the password? Oh my God. No, we're using SSH keys for everything, so nobody flip out. What's really good here is you can do, and on every node, we keep logs, so you can actually see what happened here. Stuff happens. And then when you go in there and you fix it manually, you can say Juju resolve, and then it'll work. Now, sometimes, because of the transient nature of the cloud, I've seen this happen before. Sometimes you'll ask Amazon for a node, and it's whatever. So in the old days, you used to care, right? It's like, oh my God, I asked for a server, and it didn't come up. But in the cloud world, just throw away and get a new one. You don't really think about it. Unless it's a fundamental problem, and you start to noticing that stuff isn't working. But it's nice and repeatable. What we can also do is you can say, and this will fire you up into the unit in a team-up session, which you can run all the charm hooks and stuff like that by hand and resolve them by hand. It's useful for debugging and stuff. But we'll get into that a little bit later when we actually talk about charms. But yeah, it looks like it did resolve itself. It must have just been a temporary issue.
Well, we did a retry.
Yeah.
So it reran the relations changed.
Yeah. And then, so Rick, where do I get the IP address for MediaWiki?
So click it,
Got it?
then go to charm detail. No, that's not it.
Yeah.
It's you wrote it. It pops out of the left side. Where does it come from?
Okay.
I don't know. I didn't write it.
You did write this.
Oh, you have to go to unit, right? Because the service doesn't have an IP address.
Right.
You got to go to the units.
I got
Click
it.
on the unit. It pops out to the left, and there's the.
There we go. There we go. Okay. All right. So note to self-canonical design for lower resolution screen.
Yeah, there's a bug.
We in fact have a bug for this right now. It's called Juju GUI in presentation mode.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yes.
control
No.
minus will just shrink your fonts.
Oh, yeah. Look, you fight the designers on it. I tell you what.
Anyway,
There you go.
Because I want to know if we're exposed it. Theoretically, if I'm not lying to you, we should have MediaWiki running.
Did you expose it?
I did.
main page, it redirected you.
Oh, yeah. I accidentally got us a wiki.
We got ourselves a wiki.
Yeah. So I think the important thing to remember here, we're showing you, like, you know, no one's going to run home and say, oh my God, finally someone solved deploying WordPress. Right? But this is just an example, and it's easy because everybody knows what WordPress is, right?
Yeah.
So in this case, I'm going to give one more example before I take over too much of Mark's time. It's not just with the pre-canned charms that we give you, right? We can give you charms that do things like this. I have a Rails app that I want to deploy here. Deploy. And in that config, you put in the git URL to your Rails application, and you need PostgreSQL. Oh, actually, we have PostgreSQL already. So this charm is going, it's installing all that Ruby stuff, and then you build a relation. So it's not just about, oh, you know, anybody can copy PHP to a server and make it serve stuff, right? It's really, the examples that we're showing you are simple because everyone understands what WordPress is, and most people have deployed WordPress. It's when you get to things that you've never deployed before, like Cassandra or some sexy thing that someone talks about, you can just look for it in the Juju charm store. And if there's a charm, you can pretty much deploy it live. So we have a whole bunch of stuff, everything from IRC bouncers to stuff I've never even heard about.
Pull up charm roll. How many guys developers write software?
This one?
Yeah. So how many? One of the awesome things we love about the charms is you can make this config whatever you want. And one of the things we're just talking about that's really kind of cool with them. Go to the configuration on Charm World there, and if you go down a little bit, you'll see Revno and the source. So one of the things that I wasn't really sold until I did this stuff. So we run tests, and whenever we run tests, we want to make sure our staging server updates with the version of the software that passed the test, right? And I don't want to have to do it. So we actually have our Jenkins, which runs our tests for us. It says, okay, dude, your tests have passed. It is revision number 421. And once the test passed, it makes a Juju call to our staging charm of Charm World and sets that revision number to 491. And automatically, every time tests pass, we have a staging server by the charm that just updates itself to the next revision of the software. And it just keeps rolling and rolling and rolling, and it's really sweet. What's great is that whenever someone breaks something horribly, we can go to that same staging server and give it a quick command and go, hey, staging, please go back to revision 412, because I'm pretty sure my stuff worked then. And it will actually update itself to revision 412 of the software, because that's what the config is written to support. And then you can now from staging go and poke at it and everything. And
you're using Git, and you know it works here, and it doesn't work here. You can do Git bisect and get a middle one, and then show it in, and then just keep following Git bisect until you get to the spot.
Well, what's cool is so Charm World requires a MongoDB server and Elasticsearch server to both be running in order to be fully functional and working to like QA it, to look at it, right? And so here, because we deployed it with the charms, the Mongo charm just deployed the Mongo, the Elasticsearch deployed the Elasticsearch, so you don't have to set that stuff up or whatever. The charm is ready to do it. And you can completely set up like test fake environments. We've done presentations where we're like, hey, what if this looked like this in the Juju GUI? And we're like, okay, well let's create a branch. Let's muck stuff up. No tests, we don't care. This is horrible code, we're just gonna muck this up. And then we deploy the Juju GUI charm, and we set the branch to our horrible, awful, complete mocked up branch. And then we say, now designers or bosses, go look at it and tell me, do you like this or not? And we throw away so little time doing complete tests where they can go in and play with it, and it's on real hardware and a real system, and we don't have to give them instructions on how to bring up stuff. It's really sweet to be able to do that.
And can you have multiple staging servers?
As many as you want to throw up, right? I mean, it's just you can deploy a charm over and over. We didn't really show that, but like,
after he does the this slide, I'm going to show you a Rickish workflow. Okay. Like that.
So
there you go.
this is our. So we used to call, and still do sometimes, say Juju is DevOps distilled, which sounds just as buzzwordy as service orchestration for the cloud, maybe even more so. Because what is DevOps? Anybody here want to define this?
How to make the printer work.
Development operation.
It's development and operations working together.
Yeah.
Like that always happens. Seems obvious. But what you really need for development and operations to work together in a reasonable way is a common language to express and deploy stuff as a developer and in production. And Juju, like this is the DevOps facility, provides a common language. You can do that, you create a charm, you write the little set of things that you need to deploy and relate. You can do that in local containers, which we're going to show in a minute, right? And you can do that on the cloud. Or you can do that, we have this thing called Metal as a Service, which just, if you give it a pile of servers that have IPMI, it will turn them on, install the OS, boot them up, do everything, and then let you Juju deploy to them in the same way that you're deploying to the cloud. So you don't have to have Amazon, you just have to have a pile of servers that talk IPMI. And now, with what is landing this week, you can do Juju deploy and then to SSH : and send it an actual string of a Ubuntu server that you already set up. So you don't even need to have IPMI working. You could have some crappy hardware, and you can just use that with Juju. It's fun. So the idea is 10 years ago, I got machines. It took me 4 months. Well, it took him 4 months. It took me 1 month. We were way better. And then we got virtualization. It gets faster and easier to get new services up. You got cloud computing that makes it even faster and easier. You got configuration management. You got Chef and Puppet that makes it faster and easier. You got tools like Juju, provisioning and setting up the OS and setting up the service and relating them. Those things are all handled for you in a super automated way. And then eventually, the services will just orchestrate themselves. It will be unnecessary. So that is. So I think George was going to show.
Yeah, so I'm going to show a Rick style workflow. Oh, what happened there?
In a terminal window.
Sorry.
Whoa.
I think Unity crashed? Stay classy. Oh no, it's there. Alright. Let's move on.
Unity did not crack.
Live demos. Yeah. So one of the awesome things about the cloud is that there's multiple cloud providers, right? First it was only Amazon, and then, but we like it when companies compete with prices and services and performance. So Juju's cloud agnostic by default. Everything you've seen so far deployed to Amazon, but it's really important to us as Ubuntu to make sure that we abstract all that stuff from you. So if you want to use another cloud provider, we give you the same experience. That's especially important in a local environment. But I'm just going to do a quick, I'm going to switch to HP Cloud here for a moment just to show you that it works. Now when I do a Juju status here, I've only got my orchestration node running. So, oh, and I tried to deploy Discourse earlier today. Oh, and that actually seemed to have worked. So what's important here is that you deploy to different cloud providers the exact same way that you deploy locally and other stuff. What's important there is, let's say you have an application that you want to test and you're deciding, okay, we're a startup, we're going to make a bunch of money. Where do we want to deploy? Do we want to deploy on HP? They're having a special on storage this month. Do we want to deploy on Rackspace? Do we want to deploy on AWS? Right? In the old way, you have to figure out how each cloud works, get your stuff running on there. Then you would run benchmarks. What's the bang for the buck? Right? Even cloud providers, the instance sizes are all different, right? So an M1 small on HP Cloud is totally different than an M1 small on Amazon, if they even use their own naming thing. Google Cloud, totally different. They can't even define CPU units the same, right? So for us, it's really nice to be able to say Juju deploy MySQL and doing this on HP the same exact way that you would do it on Amazon. But the RIP type workflow that I'm talking about here is, I get this a lot from especially Mac users. They have to deploy on Linux servers because Linux dominates on servers, but they like their little Macs and their Apples and stuff. And when they switched to their Apples, they really liked it, right? Because it was like a Unix-like operating system, but their sound worked. And they got things like Python and Rails and stuff. The problem was that you would homebrew install Ruby, Rails, Python, or whatever, and the stuff that they would get and install on their Mac was slightly different than what was on their production server, right? So then people invented tools like Vagrant, right, that automated installing VMs and stuff so you can have the exact same environment on your laptop so that when you push to production, you didn't get those kind of subtle problems that happens from not having the same environment in development and production. So we built this into Juju with the local provider. I'm going to switch to local, and I'm going to do a Juju status here. And I've already got something running. So, oops.
Notice it's really fast.
Yeah,
If you use the
I did see that.
It's way cooler than that.
Although, don't think that you can just deploy 50 units of 3 different things at once.
Yeah, well,
beefy desktop hardware.
I'll get to that in a second. Yeah. So it's really important here. Now, deploying WordPress and MySQL on your laptop, no big deal, right? But if you think about the guy who's writing, let's say, a Rails application, right? You got your application in your IDE on your computer, right? And then you hack. Okay, I need to show it off to a buddy, right? And then you would go and you would like deploy that somewhere, and then they would say, no, you need to change this, and then you would change it locally, and then you would forget to push, blah, blah, blah. What's really nice about this is that you can just Juju switch local, deploy your application, keep your application open in your IDE, make the changes that you need to do, commit to Git, right, and then just tell your buddy, push this, and then they could replicate the exact same environment on their laptop, or on any Linux machine, or Ubuntu machine, theoretically any Linux machine once we figure out other issues. What's really nice about this is that the way you're deploying these is very, very similar to how you would run it in production and stuff like that. So it's nice because the application and the database, when they're talking, they have to figure out the same networking type of issues, even though you're doing these internally. So what we envision is being able to prototype, and you can even install the GUI and stuff locally and everything, being able to prototype things locally. And that's very important, especially in the cloud, because the cloud costs money, right? So right now, if your developers are developing on Amazon, every time they're firing up stuff, it costs you money. And we joke around how these are cheap. You know, if you're a very large shop, that starts to get expensive, right? That's why people like the private cloud. They like the flexibility of, hey, my developers need a machine right now, but maybe they do want to keep their data private, or maybe they want to, rein in cost because they have a whole bunch of machines laying around. So that's really useful. So what our guys do is they tend to develop locally, right? And then at the end of the day, it's like, okay, I'm ready to go. Let me deploy it on Amazon once instead of the whole day. Okay, I passed my test, good to go. So it's a cost-saving measure as well, and it's really nice to be able to prototype locally. Now, fast. If you that would totally smoke my laptop because it'll do exactly what I says it does. So the nice thing too that Alex, so we should find someone that can do a presentation just on LXC. LXC containers are, to me, what I like them about VM, better than VMs, is they're a lot more lightweight. Sometimes I don't need an entire VM, right? I just need something that's a super cheroot, right? It's like isolated enough for, but not too much. I don't want to give up too many of my resources. So LXC containers are really great, so we really leverage that on a local environment. Ideally, someday, we have this dream. Oh God. You should be able to say Juju export local environment, pipe, Juju import. Oh, we have a button, AWS. Wouldn't that be the awesomest thing ever, right? Or if you're on AWS and they always lower prices, right? But maybe you're like, you know what, that HD Cloud guy keeps calling me, he's giving me a good deal. Wouldn't it be nice to just migrate entire environments from one to the other without losing? Now we can do that today. The whole topology you can replicate over. We don't do data though, so you'd have to figure out how to move your databases and stuff. But you can see where we want to go with this, right?
So if you go back, can you go, is the Amazon environment still up?
It is.
Can you go there and hit Control-D?
There's a button.
There's a button now? Where's the button?
Oh, well, look in the header. I don't know if it's deployed or not, and it's released or not.
There's a button that's coming.
Well, let's have a look. I think it might be there.
It might be coming very soon.
WordPress 49 is starting up.
There. Change your branch and trunk and you'll actually see it.
Oh, that's right, because we...
Right, because the config option. See how cool this is?
That's right. So we're talking about the Juju GUI has added a new feature that there's a button to export your environment as a YAML file. It used to be you had to hit a control key to get it, but now it's a button. That may not be, it's not deployed to our live site, and it may not be anywhere that you can actually use because it's not in a release. But if you change the config to trunk on the GUI that is deployed in your Amazon, you'll get the button. So if we don't have the button,
getting a beta channel for free. Yeah, there's a button right up there next to the alerts. There's the button.
Okay, hold on, I'm getting it.
well, that button is
Oh, that is
discovery. Gotta talk.
You mean the Apple AirPlay button?
Yeah, so the little button that says, hey, go up.
Yeah. There's gonna be there's a matching
Hey, at
import.
least you know it's a live demo, see?
Yeah.
I didn't even know this landed. It's good.
This is
Live without a net, baby.
Release early.
Like I said, my presence is justified. So the button
You're
crashed.
still not getting dinner.
There we go, there we go.
There's the YAML file.
Let's ignore my parody games there. Okay, export YAML.
We
Save.
launched 50 instances on your machine.
Dude, what is happening to my life? Hold on.
Did you actually cancel that 50 ad units?
I think it was acting goofy before that.
Yeah.
Okay, so while this is happening, what that button export did is it created a configuration file that is all of the services, the number of units, and all of their configuration and their relationships to one another, all as a big piece of config file.
Yeah.
I can take that and use Juju deployer to deploy all of that at one time.
Well, you can save that. And
Right,
you can take
save
that same
this.
file,
Got
the
it.
HP cloud, AWS cloud, local cloud, and all that stuff you set up, the WordPress, the relations, the media wiki, and all that stuff is all saved in this file. So all that work he did, he could have basically like saved it off and go, okay, now, you know, Jim, I want you to go see, you know, go to this HP cloud and see how it performs.
And
Or
you
like
could-
we were running benchmarks. Let's run this on a small and a large and a whatever, and take this file and be able to.
So is there a Juju import for that?
Yes.
You
Yes.
just Juju import that YAML
Yeah, it's
file?
called Juju deployer. It's a separate little tool, but
There'll be an
it's
import
in
button
here.
coming soon.
Yeah, in the GUI it'll have import, and then in Juju it'll eventually have it. But you can see like it has a bunch of configuration that is defaults. So we make people have same defaults for their software, so you don't have to
And
like.
those are gonna go away too. We're gonna remove, if the values, if the values is the default value, we're gonna leave it out of the YAML file.
But I'm using it because it's there to tell me what we have same.
Just FYI.
What's really nice is that on the Juju Charm Store, we can say, here's a highly scalable WordPress configuration. You grab it, and then you're done. You don't have to worry about it, right? Which is nice. Especially when you get to more complicated. I need a multi-master MySQL to work. You know, which ones are available? Oh, this one does 90% of what I want. Fork it, make the fixes that you need. Either share it or don't share it. Well, I want you to share it because everyone should have this kind of stuff.
So when am I supposed to be done?
10 after 8.
Okay.
You got 20 minutes.
Well, no, you got some Steambox things to do. So
Yeah, it's 10 after 8.
Oh, done.
We need to be done at 8:30.
You have 3 minutes.
right.
From 10 after 8.
So let's go
till
back to
8:30.
the slides and not. Let's go a little faster.
Yeah.
Okay. So
5, 6 minutes.
past this. Okay, so this seems like super magical, right? Does anybody feel like this is maybe a little too magical? Turns out it's actually kind of simple. I'm over-exaggerating, it's not simple. But it is not that complicated. There's basically a thing that we call the orchestration service, or the orchestration node, earlier today. That thing sits in the cloud, and it has a database, and that database says, there ought to be 10 units of MySQL configured this way. There ought to be a unit of, there ought to be 10 units of WordPress and 1 unit of MySQL. I said that wrong. But, so it just says, this is what, we call it the state. This is what your environment of machines that are connected together should look like, and what configuration they should have and how they're connected to each other. And it knows about like the individual machines, it knows about all these things. Whenever you do something like add unit, we change the state. The state says, oh, there should be an 11th unit. There's a thing called a provisioning agent that sees, oh, like there's a unit that was added, I ought to do some provisioning thing. And based on what provider, it calls out to the cloud, does the provisioning thing. And then say we created a new WordPress unit. It provisions that from Amazon, deploys the operating system that charm requires, so it's like precise if you needed precise. And then installs an agent onto that machine that is called machine agent, That machine agent says, oh, I'm up and ready and I can do things. And then says, oh, here's a unit that you can have. So it installs a unit agent. That unit manages that one thing that you've deployed onto that machine. So there's just a couple of agents and they listen for changes in the state. One of the changes is, say we did that add relation MySQL WordPress. That says there's a relation changed event that happens. When that happens, both things get, hey, there's a new relationship. The charm on the one side says, oh, on the MySQL side says, I have a new relationship with something, I should create a username and password for that. Sticks it on the relationship in the state. This guy gets that change event, says, oh, that's the username and password, does what it needs to do. Says, oh, well, I need to put some tables in you, so then it does that, and that's a relation change event where it says, okay, that's done. And these events just keep firing, and the charms have hooks that handle the events, and that's all that Juju does. Is it's like, hey, something changed, let's make sure the charm hook that needs to be called gets called. A charm hook is just...
You showed the GUI flip like Elasticsearch, just got really simple, it's following.
Yep. But a charm hook is just a piece of code written in any language you want. Well, any language that runs on Ubuntu Linux. If you have some really weird esoteric stuff, no. But anything that's an executable file, and it's just a file in a spot in a files hierarchy, and we call that thing, and we're like, hey, the relation changed event happened, call the relation changed hook. The install event happened, just install the install hook.
Yeah. My load's 13, that's why it's getting pokey. Yeah.
I'm
about to over deploy.
So, and then each charm is just, it's a collection of hooks, which are just files. They can be bash, they can be anything. Ideally, you probably write them in an actual programming language, because sometimes they get a little complicated over time. Particularly if you have a lot of complex relationships that you can support. But you can do as little as much as you want. There are charms where the install hook is apt-get install Apache. Done. Is a bash file with one line. Done. There are charms that have much more complicated install hooks than that. You do what you need. You can do it in whatever language you want. It's a set of files in a specific structure. That is all a charm is. You can put it in GitHub, you can put it anywhere. We have a lightweight contribution process that is in fact tied to Launchpad because we're Canonical and we have Launchpad. Yes?
So Juju's only for Debian-based type systems?
Currently, Juju, the client, will run on any Unix style system and Windows.
Well, you just said that the hook is a one-liner, which has an apt-get install.
The hook's on the client.
Okay, the client, like I'm sitting here on my laptop doing stuff and launching stuff out in the cloud, that thing can be any of those things. The servers that it launches right now can be any recent version of Ubuntu. That is not necessarily going to be true in the future. That is true right now. We are obviously Canonical. This is an open source project. Anybody can work on it anytime. But we care obviously more about deploying and orchestrating Ubuntu awesome than we do about some other Unixes. But we have customers who care a lot about others. So I would expect that to change in the near future. And there's no... But then charms will be, we call it series, but they will be series specific. So right now a charm is guaranteed to work on precise or on raring or this specific version of Ubuntu. We will have charms that work on Windows 8, maybe someday. But we will also have charms that work on other places. But they will always be specific to that version of that OS.
Okay.
So charms can say apt-get install, or a charm, you can have a different charm that installs WordPress that says our yum install, but they won't be the same charm. on 2 different OSs. They'd be 2 different charms. They might be very similar. You could make the same charm.
And you can do whatever you want in a charm. So if your charm calls out to the Puppet recipe that does all that.
Right, so we do have
Translation
charms
you can do that.
that are written with Chef Manifest.
So is the charm just used to get the thing installed, or is there like an upgrade thing?
No, so there's a
remove thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, so if
Sorry, I'm not
charms
this guy.
have hooks for all kinds of life cycle events.
Okay.
So there is a remove and there's a, when relations are added, those are hooks in a charm too.
Okay.
So it has all the things that you would do during the
So what do
life.
you do when 6 months from now, after I've deployed this awesome thing in production, and now charms have been upgraded
So there's
out in the charm store, and Juju itself has been upgraded?
So Juju has an upgrade itself, like path where you can say upgrade Juju and it'll go from the current version of Juju to the next supported version of Juju. Charms, you can upgrade the charm itself, which is the deployment code. And then we already saw a bunch of examples of charms having a specific revision number for a piece of software in the charm. Charms can upgrade the software inside of themselves. So we have all of those stories exist. Some of them, and some charms, for instance, do not do a great job of upgrading themselves. That is a charm quality issue that we are working on. And other charms do a great job.
For a lot of the boring charms, like memcache, HA proxy, all they really do is sudo apt get installed, and you don't really have to worry about upgrades because you're deploying to an LTS. Some charms let you pick a random version if you want, and sometimes it's like, well, if you do that, you kind of, you know, we'll give you the bucket of paint, but if you paint yourself in a corner. But yeah, we can certainly do a better job.
And so, your question?
What's the relation between Juju, Puppet, and Chef? Do they work together? Do they not?
Okay, so I'm going to answer, this is going to be the last question. This is a question that we always get asked, and then you can set up your next thing.
Okay.
Okay, so Juju, Puppet. If you remember, there was that service orchestration DevOps distilled slide where there's the Puppet and Chef grew up in a world where machines mattered, particularly Puppet. Let's take Puppet as a prototypical configuration management tool. Puppet spends a lot of time trying to do things like enforce that nobody else got into this machine and mucked it up. It will say, hey, if somebody did something to a configuration file, I'm going to change it back. You're not allowed to do that. You're going to screw up this machine. That is bad. This machine is important. Don't mess it up. And that's when you're in a world of bare metal. It takes 4 months to get a server set up. You did a bunch of manual stuff to set up the server. Like, it's really important to not screw it up. Like, some random dude can just SSH in there and be like, now who knows, next time you upgrade something, it's all broken. That is bad. And Puppet cared a lot about that because it grew up in that world. It's a configuration management tool that expects servers to be stable, that expects things to not be transferred. Juju is a service orchestration tool that expects things to go away and come back, relations to be added and go away, things to scale up and scale down. So they grew up in different times and places with different goals. They do a lot of the same things. Puppet and Chef are very machine oriented. Like, this is the configuration of this machine. And as a side effect of configuring this machine properly, WordPress happens. And Juju is very much the other way. I want WordPress to happen, and as a side effect of needing WordPress, I'm going to get a machine and configure it. And those two ways of thinking, like, they're really the same thing, but it's like the two sides of the coin, and it has a very different feeling and approach. And the scale up, scale down, horizontal scalability just falls out of the Juju approach a lot more easily. So that's one. We think about services, not servers. Two, we are about orchestration, not about configuration. And you can write a charm in anything you want. And there are, in fact, charms. Like the Rails thing we deployed earlier, that is actually a bunch of chef recipes. Like the install hook is the chef recipe. It is not written in Python or Rails or anything, it's chef. So we can use chef or Puppet to configure a machine and get all of the things that they have, if you want that. And it's up to the charm authors too. But we also do things on top of what they do and have a different approach. Ideally, you're going to use chef in like standalone mode, and Juju's going to try and make it config onto the machine, and then we run chef, which actually scales better than chef service. Not that Juju is perfect at scaling, but it will get better. And Juju is open source and it's free, and there's no special stuff.
Everything we showed you here is free software. I think one time someone saw that GUI and they're like, that's like Amazon Ops works, except I can use it internally at work and I don't have to pay anybody, right? I was like, yes, absolutely.
Will Juju scale automatically based on load?
It does not scale automatically based on load because often the rules for that are complex, but it gives you the primitives so that you can monitor something. When something is 80% CPU utilization, you can add unit.
We've had guys hack, they've deployed Nagios and then use the API to monitor Nagios, and when things happen, Juju deploy or add unit or remove unit. However, when you do that, it becomes really easy to kind of screw yourself.
Especially don't remove all of them.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, well, there was no load at all, so hey, you said no units. Autoscaling is one of the things that you think you want, and then when you think about it, you're like, you know what? Or autoscale a little bit, but before, this thing is tied into my credit card, before you do anything crazy, I'll get a human involved at some point. It's a lot harder to think. I thought exactly, I was like, man, we could just have stuff automatically happen, and every time.
But to be fair, like what we focused on is making the tools to make this really easy, because if we decided we're going to do it based on these rules, like there are a lot of systems that auto-scale for you, and they all don't quite work. So it's better to give people the tools to do it themselves than to give them a tool that doesn't work. That said, we would like to give people a tool that actually works, but that takes time. And that's why we have a lot of people working on it.
How old are you? 2.5 years?
Yeah, 2.5 years. It was prototyped 2.5 years ago in Python, and then the current version has been written in Go, and was released about 6 months ago. The prototype was pretty good. It was solid. But the Go version is in many ways cleaner and better, and the whole Python rewritten to Go story is like, maybe when I come and do a Go talk, I will talk about that. Because that is an interesting story, and also the results are very interesting to me as someone who loves Python and actually thinks that the Go version of Juju is better than Python.